Hi everyone, from me, Brent Graham from Good for the Game, and welcome to this Women's Rugby World Cup betting preview. Is it the Women's Rugby World Cup 2021 or 2022? Frankly, I don't know. I see they're still using the hashtag on Twitter, hashtag RWC21. A little bit confusing that, and of course that was due to the tournament being postponed. Similar, I think, we had with the Euro Football Championships. But joining me from the USA, it's Harry Jones, Harry Baldy on Twitter. Harry, great to have you back on the show, mate.
How's it, Brent? I'm in the witness protection program today.
Why is that?
It just looks like I'm a silhouette or something.
Yeah, yeah. It looks like quite a nice background. What is that there?
That's the buildings of Dallas behind me, not the ones that people are used to seeing, but you can see where the Dallas Mavericks play, kind of over my shoulder, right there.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, great. Well, you and I asked you yesterday if you wouldn't mind recording the show with me, and then at the last minute decided to go live, and we'll see. I see a couple of boys are coming in there at the moment. Chris, he actually popped on quite a lot earlier, said, how's it going? Hopefully it's going to be profitable. And I certainly made the point on the forum this week, and in a couple of the WhatsApp groups we were discussing, I mean, this is the sort of tournament, Harry, where if you can do your homework, it is possible to get perhaps a better edge on the bookies than you normally would, because let's face it, the bookies, most of them are going in a bit cold on this one as well.
Yeah, I think so. I was looking around in my head for a good analogy for you, and here's what I got. It's a dog track versus the elite horse races. I don't know about you, but when I grew up, there was a horse in Cape Town that ran at Kenilworth that always won. His name was Jamaican Music. It was a light, big horse, gray colored. I think they won the Guineas, the Derby, the July, the Nursery. You couldn't go wrong if you bet on the gray, Jamaican Music.
Yes.
On the other hand, I've been to dog track races here in the U.S., in New Mexico or Colorado, where I don't care how favored the Jamaican Music dog of the world is. The thing is, when they say, here's Sparky, and the artificial rabbit comes around the corner, those greyhounds, if they start to tumble, if one little foot gets out of whack, the whole pile of dogs is in a big scrum, and the worst dog will win. I mean, the worst dog will run across, like sniffing and looking around at the sky. So the Women's World Cup, number one, doesn't even have a name for the trophy. Number two is still labeled as 2021. You have teams that are just now provisioning their jerseys. You have teams that are the woman is teaching class, is taking care of her 3 kids, up against teams that are fully professional, 21 contracted players, perfect kit, and former, all black coaches on the team with Dan Carter advising them. And so there's a lot of mismatch, which means that when they're setting the numbers, nobody knows. It's 47, 56, no one knows. This is just something that it could very much depend on who's playing that day. And if, 2 props are out or one call goes the wrong way, suddenly, it's a close enough game at 21 and you win. So I think it's fascinating. I think it's an interesting thing. Coaches are going to matter a lot. Systems, not so much. Not game plans. It's superior players. There's a few players on the field sometimes that can actually literally run through and around other players.
Yeah, and I think one of them, I think did I see, is it Portia? What's her name from New Zealand? Did she score 8 tries in a game once or something ridiculous?
Yeah, Portia Woodman is one to watch for sure. But actually, every team, all the top teams have 1 or 2 players that have just physical advantages over the other players. And so I think there's some interesting dark horses and maybe gray horses here. I do think, for example, it's England's cup to lose. England is prohibitive favorites. But that's not the end of the story, because if England were to have 2 or 3 injuries, suddenly you'd say the home team, New Zealand, is more in the driver's seat. So I think it's England's to lose and New Zealand's to steal. And then I think my most likely dark horses are going to be Canada and the French, with the USA probably be able to make some noise as well in the women's game. But look, if Australia is also something that I'm interested in, I'm actually, having talked to some of the girls playing for Australia, and I think they're a very happy camp. Although they're visitors, they're not really visitors, right? It's a very quick little flight over the ditch. Have you ever heard of this story? Lose to New Zealand in the pool in the World Cup, and then you win the World Cup. That's something we've heard about.
That's for sure.
So it's all about getting to the quarterfinals for Australia and US, whereas for England and New Zealand, no one's going to think it's success unless they win the whole thing. So there's pressure there. And I do think everyone's probably wondering, well, why is New Zealand not the favorite if the Cup's in New Zealand and they've won the World Cup 5 times? So this is interesting because if this tournament was held at the time it was supposed to be held in 2021, they would have been the favorites. But in the interim, the England has just swept the board. They've crushed New Zealand with record wins. I think they've won 25 Test matches in a row. England. Wow. That is the most that any Test team, men and women, have won in a row. Also, Brent, I wanted to tell you the system, how it sets up is you have 12 teams and 8 qualifiers get into the knockouts. So there's not, a genuine shock exit's probably not likely, but the casualty in, say, Pool C, which has England, France, South Africa, and Fiji, is probably going to feel pretty hard done by because that's the pool of death.
Right. And tell me something, Harry, I was looking at the groups and that other day, what I couldn't figure out, and I don't know if you've seen this, but are England and Australia, England and New Zealand, assuming they both top their groups, will they meet in the final, or is there a chance they could bash heads in the semi-finals?
No, it is seeded. So it's seeded in a way that, it's supposed to be New Zealand and England in the final if it all lays to form.
Okay.
But there's some pretty good matches right off the bat. I don't know if you want to take it by pool or by matches. Yeah. It's okay.
Look, I've got them by match, but we can discuss it in terms of the pool as well. Let's start off. I think South Africa actually opened proceedings up against France. And Harry, here we got a big handicap, plus 43.5. And France third favourites at 12-1. South Africa, well, it looks like damage control here for them.
Yeah, that's a tough one. So the French have a scrum half. Her name is Laura Sansus, and she's basically the female version of Antoine Dupont. I mean, she really is that good. It's her 3rd World Cup. She can pick up from the base and actually run through people, but she can also put others into space. I would say the French are probably always the third place finisher in these World Cups. They were 3rd place in 94, 02, 06, and 14. They were the last team to beat England. And so for them, they're probably looking at the South African match as almost a warm-up for Le Crunch, which could be Le Crush. But it should be an easy match. But the French, in every sport, there's a potential for them just to lay an egg. So, but they have some very experienced players, and they have good results recently. For South Africa, with Stanley Raubenheimer and his team, the noise they're putting out before the World Cup is very much a gracious competitor, moral victory. It doesn't sound like they're really thinking they can knock anyone off big. But I think for South Africa, their big match is against Fiji, not against France. I think they know they're not going to finish above England and France. But coming in, that a series draw against Japan, 2 wins over Spain. They got some veterans in the side. I do think Lynn Cantwell coming in, she's a former Ireland center, doing the high performance has helped. But I think most of the squad for South Africa is making debut in World Cup in New Zealand. It's a tough one. I think there's some sevens players there, but I'm going to say that 43 is interesting. When French get on a roll, they really score. They have really good wings. They have actually a little more speed than you'll think, and they have a monster pack. So I would say that's not one I want to get into very much. I think it might be set just about exactly right.
Right. I think it's a very early start South African time there as well. Henrik saying now blending nicely with the French in this shirt. Good to have Henrik there. Look forward to your opinions as well. I think the next game then is in the same group, Harry. It's Fiji up against England. Is that correct? Did we say? Because Fiji in the group with South Africa. And here we've got another monstrous handicap, 55.5.
Yeah, so we have England, the juggernaut with 25-game win streak, first test team to do so. Everyone's contracted. It's professional. They got Emily Scarrett. They got a World Rugby Player of the Year, Zoe Oldcroft. They've got, fabulous captain, Sarah Hunter. But here's the problem. When you play a team like Fiji, Fiji is competing at its first World Cup. This is the first time they played any of the teams in their pool ever. So there's actually no form to guide by. Physically, one-on-one, don't be surprised if they can outskill England in size and speed. They've got lightning footwork. They won the Oceania Championship pretty easily. It's so difficult to take Fiji on anything against England in this tournament. And yet I look at that 55.5 and I go, no, I don't know. I think Fiji could be trouble in the first 30 minutes, 40 minutes, and then just get worn down by the superior game style. Simon Middleton's a great coach. I think England will come, and play well. But, geez, I mean, they've got a lock, Serevi, who's the daughter of a 7-star on the men's sevens, who literally probably is the best athlete in the tournament. So, yeah.
55.5 sounding pretty big, but you take it nervously. I mean, I hear exactly what you're saying about these games. We don't really know. So you can have a bit of an opinion on that and by all means have a bit of a fun bet. As Mad Dog Odds is done, he went a while ago. He took 500 to 1 each way for fun on Fiji. So there we go. But yeah, I mean, it's a fascinating sort of contest. I mean, 55.5 is a lot. I mean, Chaz Potter just making the point that the conversions aren't gimmies, and that's true in the women's game. I mean, I know the kicking and that has improved, but the sort of touchline conversion of that, I would imagine a much higher percentage are nailed at the men's levels, or am I wrong with that assumption?
No, you're right. However, England's probably the exception. So England and France are probably the best kickers of the game, and it's no mistake why they're at the top. But I still think, geez, like what if Fiji scores 2 runaway tries or 1 intercept, or just their big lock can just run over people and they score. Let's say Fiji scores 10 points in the first half. That's a lot to make up, and it's not like it's going to be a rollover. So I think Fiji is like one of those teams that you find in the Men's World Cup, Samoa, Fiji, where Tonga, it's sometimes hard to put them away.
That's it. I see boys a bit divided in the live chat. Chris reckons England will cover that easily. Johan saying Fiji should cover the cap. So this looks like quite an interesting one. Of course, we will have things like total points lines and that closer to kickoff. I see the bookies. I haven't seen anything out yet. I don't know if anyone on the chat has seen anything, but I think the bookies, they tend to tread carefully in these tournaments, the bookmakers, because they know fools at the end of the day. And they know that, as much as we don't know, there will be 1 or 2 guys out there who have got some very, very shrewd opinions on this. Let's go to the next game there, which is, who the other 2 teams? I'll bring that game up. Who the other 2 teams with Fiji and England in the group? Okay, no, we've covered that, South Africa. So let's go to Australia against New Zealand. This just surprised me, someone who hasn't followed the game that closely, because I know Australia got such a good sevens team. So when I saw plus 27.5, I thought that seemed big. But you were saying to me beforehand, they just don't play enough rugby.
Yeah, they don't get the reps that New Zealand did. Actually, interesting. This is an interesting match because they play each other a lot. This is the only team that Australia really plays. And I was giving the men's players, the Wallabies, some guff because the Wallaroos are actually now higher ranked than the Wallabies. It's a 7 versus 9. Also, they have the same Eden Park hoodoo as the men. So in a way, if Australia was to shock the world and win at Eden Park, it would be double trouble for the Wallabies that the women actually got over them. Seriously, though, both programs had to replace their coaches because of controversy, derogatory language caught on audio. In both cases, you had bullying allegations about Glenn Moore, and he gets replaced by, the GOAT, Wayne Smith. Wayne Smith got Mike Cron, Graham Henry, Dan Carter helping him. They do have, I think it's a 29 match, winning streak against Australia. So it's actually very tough for Australia to go to Eden Park and expect to win. The reason why there is some hope here is because the last time they played was in Adelaide. I was there in person and I watched the entire match, and they held New Zealand down, and they were in the match with 20 to go, 15 to go. So there is some, familiarity there. There's a lot of pressure on New Zealand at home. So I do think that's why it's not a 50 or 40 point match there. But I mean, New Zealand's got some frailty, and it's almost like they're mirroring the men's game right now. They're up and down. They actually struggled a little bit in the last year. So they should win this. They should win this comfortably. If they do win it and they score a lot, it'll be in the second half. I think the first half's going to be pretty tight and well contested. They have some tactical shifts in Australia, so they're kicking more, which is actually good for them. They do have a couple of people that have been brought in. One of the players that I talked to on our podcast is Sarah Nakama, who's a lock, very mobile. They also brought in some sevens players, and there's a wing for Australia that could be a special weapon. Her name is Bien Tarita. So watch those two players, Tarita and Naikama. A lot of Pacific Islander influence in the Australian team. It's a happy camp. I think they could push the Black Ferns a little bit, but in the end, you'd have to say, looking at that 27.5, New Zealand should cover it. New Zealand should be okay. I'd probably take them in a 30-point win over Australia.
Yeah, it seems like the guys in the live chat are sort of agreeing with you there. Most people edging it towards New Zealand's way. Just a reminder, this is actually the first of 3 live rugby shows we'll have coming up over the next, 24 hours, actually less than 24 hours. In just about an hour and a half's time, we'll have the handicap, where we'll be talking URC and Bunnings. And then tomorrow, 1:30, Chris is going to be hosting it. It's going to be the Gallagher Premiership show, and just talking through the betting and that after the team sheets are out there. Henrik just saying brilliant insight there from Harry, and looking forward to getting it on the rest of the games as well. Harry, who are the other teams in the group with Australia and New Zealand then? So I'll bring that game. Is it USA, Italy, or Wales?
Wales and Scotland is the other one in Pool A, and that's the most attractive match. Yeah.
Yeah, it's the last game. It's the last game on the card, but as you say, most attractive. Certainly, the tightest game according to the bookmakers. And I saw quite a bit of banter, and I unfortunately didn't get a chance to read much of it properly on Twitter. But a lot of the boys seem to have opinions on this one, and this is going to be a big game.
Yeah, I'd load up on this one, on Wales. I'd go all on Welsh. And I'll tell you my reasoning here. So Scotland is actually the first time they've been competing on the world stage since 2010. They've been gone from the World Cup for a long time. They have only one player that I would actually consider to be a top player, which is their number 8, Jade Conkle. They lost their last match friendly against the US in August. They don't really have a good track record against Wales. They lost to Wales kind of big in the Six Nations this year. They don't travel well. Their lead up to this has been very light. They played Colombia in Dubai to get the last spot of the World Cup. And I feel like they're maybe a little bit old in the tooth. They also had a tragedy with one of their former colleagues and teammates dying because of an unrevealed, undisclosed brain injury, which the family has sued Scottish Rugby Union, and it's really cost a really big pull over the team, and it's kind of they're not the happiest team out there. Whereas Wales, in contrast, Wales just got a shitload of money put into their program. They actually have some of the best full-time and part-time contracts around. I think they have 12 full-time contracts, and then I think another 29 players training under some form of contract. So, they're paid, and that makes people happy. Also, they have actual kit that's designed for women. This sounds ridiculous, but, we're still catching up in the game. And so just having actual form-fitting uniforms for the first time at a World Cup is amazing. So they have good sponsors. As far as their results, I mean, I think they finished third in the Six Nations. I think I'm right on that. That's a strong finish. And I think also they have some really good speed on the field. They have a wing, Jasmine Joyce, to watch. They have a flanker, Alicia Butchers. Let's hope she doesn't butcher any tries. But I think not only does Wales have a sure chance of beating Scotland, I'll put it down right now, I think they're going to stretch the Wallaroos, because the Wallaroos are all in on New Zealand, and they might overlook their match against Wales. So also Wales is a tough team. Just imagine how the Welsh men's team plays. That's how the Welsh women play. They're hard to beat. They're ugly. They play ugly. They grind you down. They don't like anything pretty. So Scotland is going to be, I think, in trouble here, and I think they're going to lose by 10, 15.
So Henrik saying money will stream in for Wales, and I think that's a good point. I send out my best bet newsletter, and we had a nice win actually the last couple of weeks have gone fairly well. You can subscribe to that just down below the show. But I'd probably like to line this up as a best bet, but I normally send it out sort of Friday midday. And I've got a feeling after this show and the confidence of yourself and the likes of Henrik and some of the boys there in the live chat, I've got a feeling this line is going to move. And as Henrik says, probably going to move out about 4 or 5 points. If you want to back that, probably get on now. Just a quick comment before we move off this game, Harry. I mean, you mentioned they can give the Wallaroos a go, and this is actually quite a tough group, isn't it? Because, I mean, you've got obviously New Zealand, firm favourite, but Australia, Wales, and Scotland, that's a tough battle to finish top 3 there even.
Yeah, so you reckon that you have to win 2, so the Wallaroos have to find a way to win 2, so it'll all come down to Wales, Wallaroos, I would think. I think Wales will handle Scotland, and then they will look at that game against Australia as being the one.
Right. Well, let's move on to we got 2 more games to talk about. They're obviously in the group together as well. Let's start with this one. This is also priced as a competitive match. We got the USA minus 6.5 against Italy here. USA, I know you did mention when we talked about the outright, they could perhaps cause the odd scare. Do you fancy them here against the Italians?
Yeah, this is actually a really good one too. So you have, 2 pretty good teams. You have a good coach, and as I said, when it's an amateur coming into pro, and it's kind of on the edge there, a really good leadership program can really matter. So you have Rob Kane, who was the Saracens women's coach, but he brought on 2 part-time assistants, and now he's made one of them full-time, and that's the former England's men's under-20 coach, Martin Hogg. That's a good hire. That's a good, someone who's actually been at the top of the game for England under 20, which is no joke, is going to know how to motivate someone for 4-week, 6-week period of time. Also, the USA, I think, had 2 pretty good warm-up wins over Australia and Scotland, where they were not bothered, and they lost against England, but everyone does that. So I would think they will travel well as well. I think actually there's quite a bit of overlap between the USA women's and some of the South Pacific Islander nations. And so I'm thinking actually the USA will show well. On the other hand, Italy is no joke either. They actually beat the French in a rematch. They lost 21-0, and then they came back and beat them 26-19 in a rematch this summer. But they finished 5th in the Six Nations. So I don't know. The other thing about Italy is their captain, their best player, Manuela Furlan, I think she's got a niggle. If she's not playing, it's a big game changer for me. So I do think it's going to be a difficult pool for them to navigate. So on that one, I'm probably going to go the U.S. And I'm actually thinking the U.S. is going to be good in the tournament as a whole. I think they might be the one that qualifies out of this one and gives someone a tough run for their money.
Okay, interesting. A couple of the boys in the live chat quite firm on Italy. We got a bit of division in the ranks there. Let's go on to the other game in this group. It's Japan up against Canada. Canada, you've already mentioned, are a team capable of also upsetting maybe 1 or 2 of the big guns. Here they're big favourites. 35.5 points is the cap.
Canada is basically the Springboks. Okay, so Canada's they play like the Springboks do on the men's side. Big physical pack, by far the most physical team in this tournament. They're just gonna roll over people and bash them. They're very consistent. They're gonna score, and then they're gonna score another, and they're gonna score another one 5 minutes later, and 5 minutes later. Not like the All Blacks. They're not gonna score an explosion like Black Ferns. They're going to score like the Springboks, where first 10 minutes kind of quiet, but then just keep grinding. It's the only side to consistently challenge England last autumn, and they've got some really good individuals. Sophie de Groot. They got a marauding pack. They really just transition too. So if they do get the ball at all off a turnover, they're going to run into the house. So I think it's going to be fireworks. I think 35 is generous for Japan. They're shaping into good form, Canada. They really should top the Pool B and get to the semifinal. But yeah, we'll see. Japan's problem is it's the lowest ranked side. They'll have a tough time really getting going here. They have some inexperience. I think their the most capped player has 30 caps, whereas the other teams, a lot of them have 50, 60, 80. I'm thinking it's a tough one for Japan out the box. And I think Canada is another one that's going to travel well, because when you have a physical game plan, it tends to travel well.
Right, well, that brings us to the end of the matches there, Harry. Probably just I'll bring up the usual best bet section here. I mean, from what you've said, I gather that for me, it sounds like the two sort of one standouts there for you are potentially Canada and obviously Wales as a best bet. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, yes, you read that perfectly. I was about to say that. Yeah, so I think Canada's going to roll, and I think Canada might actually be up 35 in the first half. I think Wales, it'll be a slower poison, but I think in the end, Wales is just one of those teams that's going to be tough to break down, and I think Scotland's got trouble in this tournament.
Excellent. Well, thanks very much, Harry. I must admit, I've been looking forward to the tournament, but I haven't really got excited for it yet. But after our chat now and listening to some of the boys on the live chat there on the handicap and that, I'm really looking forward to catching some of these games. And I think I might be up nice and early on Saturday morning for the South Africa game. Just want to see what Chris has got to say about the weather. It means a lot more in women's rugby from what I've seen. Any rain whatsoever makes a huge difference. Knock on City. I guess, it's a fact that the women's game is certainly improving all the time, but probably because it hasn't had the funds and that which are starting to come into it, maybe there is a few more errors in that, and perhaps the weather could play a bigger difference.
That's a very smart comment, but I'll tell you the background to it. So when you watch a women's game and you actually see what they're trying to do with the space, they're actually almost like old school in that they keep trying to pass one more pass to get to the next phase, and they keep offloading. And so they're going to be jarred in contact more and have knock-ons. I don't think it's a question of worse handling necessarily. They don't kick enough. Almost nobody has a tactical kicking game except for England. And so there's acres of space on the field because the pitch is wide open because everyone is just doing short pop passes and tips. And no one's doing raking diagonal kicks. They don't have long kick, and that's the issue. So it's hard for them to find touch. And even if you get a penalty and they would kick to touch for a line out, you might only have a 5-meter gain. So they end up doing tap and goes. And so you have a lot more attempted passes in contact. You're going to have more knock-ons. So
okay, very good point. Yeah. No, excellent. I must say, excited to see it. And I think the fact that the game, maybe, as you said, there's a bit more space on the park. The team, if another team can pick up on a good tactical kicking game or something, they could really take advantage of that. And I think we're in for some great excitement. Build us nicely. We're a bit spoilt over the next few weeks. We've got the internationals in November. We've got this World Cup, and cricket fans we got the T20 World Cup coming as well. So lots to look forward to.
Yeah, I can't wait.
Excellent, Harry. Thanks so much for joining us, man. We'll definitely like to stay in touch with you as we head into the internationals, but also on the ladies' game as well. But your insights were excellent. I think all the boys benefited. Thanks also to the guys in the live chat. And we'll see you in about an hour and a half for the handicap rugby chat that matters. Thanks, everyone. Till next time.